Hey everyone, and welcome back to another weekly astrology forecast at Haunted Cerebral Astrology. I hope everyone's been doing well. It's really hot here in Berlin, actually. I think it's like the third hottest year in recorded history. Don't quote me on that. In Germany, so really hot. Just had a cold shower. Anyway, there's a lot going on this week, so I'll try to just get right into it quickly. But just want to say, yeah, if you want to support this channel, please hit the like button, comment, subscribe, share this with a friend. If you want to book a reading with me, links to do consultations are down below. So let's just get into what's going on this week. And so you can see here the astrology. And kind of the big things, of course, is the sun going into Cancer, the ingress into Cancer. So happy summer solstice, happy Cancer season to all the Cancers out there. Happy birthday. There's also this nice Venus-Neptune trine later in the day today. And then Mercury finally stations direct. Feels like that's been forever. And then there's this sun Jupiter trine. That's cool. That's kind of weird here. This Venus opposite Pluto. Maybe I'll try and talk about that more. We got the Capricorn full moon. Neptune goes retrograde. No idea really what that means. And then that's kind of the big stuff. Oh yeah, and then Venus will move into Leo. Will join Mars in Leo at the end of the week. Okay, so let's just start breaking all that down. I'm going to do my best to go as quickly as possible this week. Let's see how we do. I kind of did combination of notes, and I'll go intuitive as well. So let's get started. All right, so I have this at the top of the day on Monday. We have this, the first thing that kind of takes place. So the moon's not still in Scorpio. There's it's not in the best place. It's very sensitive. It's very vulnerable. And then the moon moves into Cancer. So now we have more water energy going on. There's more emotional energy. Summer solstice. Summer is finally here. Longest day of the year, where the light is totally dominant now. However, just like in the winter solstice, where it's like, okay, it's really dark and, basically we're just living in darkness all the time. Especially if you're like living in the north, way upper in the northern hemisphere. But it's like, that like from this point forward, light is increasing. And so this is the opposite. From this point forward, darkness is increasing. So the lights are going to start to turn down. Things are starting to decrease in general. And I think that vibe is also pronounced also by how the moon is getting closer to the south node. So in general, there's this kind of like sense of things like decreasing, like maybe before it felt like things were speeding up, things were getting more and more and more, and now it's like that first turn, like we're not really going to maybe notice it yet. It may still feel like we're kind of overwhelmed and there's a lot going on, but this is the point where things start to decrease in general as we move towards the fall equinox and then the winter solstice. So now the story becomes, now that the sun is in Cancer too, the story is going to become more intimate, more nostalgic, more sentimental. Light is now shining on things that are more intimate. So intimate relationships, especially with Venus still co-present. And whatever kind of intimate relationships we may have, they don't necessarily have to be romantic ones. Wherever you have Cancer in your life, whatever relationships are part of that placement in your chart, those are going to be more pronounced. There's going to be more focus on them. There's going to be more of a warmth and a clarity building up that kind of becomes more stable and more understood. We're going to be able to illuminate things and to see them more and to learn more about them. So yeah, where can we bring additional warmth into our life? Can we shine a light on our past maybe to see what works for us today? Cancer is this very nostalgic and memory-based sign. I mean, it has to do, it's ruled by the moon. So it's something about reflecting, thinking back on things. And with the sun, it's like, how can we shine a light on the past so that we can use it in the present? Because the sun also somehow represents the present. So yeah, there's some intentional actions we can take to begin something worthwhile as well. Like with Cancer being the first sign also in the Thema Mundi, there's something about initiations being the first sign in the Thema Mundi. Thema Mundi is this birth chart of the cosmos. It kind of represents like where the soul enters into manifestation. So if we're going to begin something, it's about something that we want to take form in our lives, something that means something that matters to us. So there's this theme of like birth, beginning, emerging, and the first breath on some level, like, you know, giving birth. When a child enters this world, there's so much involved in that. And then there's so much attached to what that life means. You know, it's like when we look at an infant child, it's like there's so much potential there. And I think that coincides with the sun entering Cancer. Now, you know, themes of consciousness entering into this world of life. So I think it's also interesting from this Berlin perspective as well, because I'm not going to bring the chart up now, but in the location chart, so the ascendant in that chart with the sun ingress in Cancer is with Cancer on the ascendant. So I'm not going to get into that, but I thought that was interesting to point out. You know, the moon, however, is in detriment, though. It's in Scorpio. So there is this kind of intensity to this summer in general. Maybe this is a summer that we don't really have so much feelings of security involved in it. There is a lot of maybe feelings of vulnerability and needing to reclaim some power on some level, like especially for some of us who maybe have been out of work for all this time, and now we're suddenly able to get some jobs. So there's this feeling of like, oh, I gotta get something together, or I don't have enough and I'm running out of time and things like that. Mars is also in the sun sign in Leo. So I think this also suggests on some level that there could be some pitfalls that we fall into as well. I mean, just because the moon is in Mars's sign, sun is in the moon sign. So there's this kind of repeating on some level of Mars being in Cancer. So I think there's something to be aware of in that level, because maybe, you know, we're getting involved in relationships that are not so good for us, or maybe we are doing things at the home that we had mistakes with during Mars and Cancer, and now we're going to be getting involved in that again. We don't really know what we're getting into exactly. But I think with the sun there's a lot more intentionality to our decisiveness. So if we take things one thing at a time, if we can, I think we'll be able to avoid some of the same pitfalls that Mars was having in Cancer. And I think with the moon being in Scorpio on that ingress, to me, it suggests like, you know, we're not fully secure in where we are right now at this point in time. So perhaps taking things one thing at a time is where we're all at anyway. So yeah, anyway, so I think it's also important to point out that also over the weekends, Jupiter stationed retrograde. So now Jupiter is also going backwards, and Jupiter is the exaltation ruler of Cancer. So on some level, like the circumstance also is about turning back on some level. Things are not expanding the same way, even though we're able to now maybe bring more attention to those intimate things in our lives, those more meaningful things in our lives. The growth that's been happening, the increasing that's been happening recently, that's slowing down. I thought also what was interesting, I noticed over the weekend on Friday, the stock exchange, especially the Dow Jones, S&P 500, they had the worst week in months, something like 8 months, because a federal agent of the Federal Reserve Bank in the US said that there's going to be like a 10% to 20% inflation increase coming up. And so everyone's like panicking. They're like, oh my God, sell everything. So yeah, there's this feeling of like turning back on the growth recently. I'm not sure if it's something to be totally scared of, because Jupiter, I think, is going back to Aquarius for a reason. I'm releasing I talk more about this, especially in my monthly astrology through Perry Dust's newsletter. So if you want to get more on that, I do a newsletter for a blog in New York City, and that should be coming out soon. So I'll put the link for that. The link for that should be in the description box too. But just about that whole Jupiter returning to Aquarius, I think there's something that's left unfinished, and Jupiter's going there for a reason. And maybe there is a lot of uncertainty, and things are not increasing anymore in the same way that we want them to or that we expect them to. But that's happening all for a reason. So yeah, on some level, circumstances are going back to where something's left unfinished, and it's going back to support something that needs greater security, right? So because of that relationship between Cancer and Jupiter, and that the sun is in Cancer is about this peak of light in the year, and things are right now, they're kind of like just up until now, things are at the highest they've been on some level. And wherever that is in your wherever you're having some of these increases in your life, they're at this peak now. But now they're starting to decrease on some level, maybe towards, and we want to get more illumination on these themes in our lives, and to try and get ourselves ready for maybe some of the hardships that are coming up. We've all lived through the last years of all this difficulty and uncertainty. So perhaps we can better prepare ourselves for what's coming next too, towards maybe more healthy living, clarity of spirit, seeing what's important to us personally, towards understanding purpose in the world on some level, remembering what matters with this whole Cancer vibe, and perhaps towards seeing like the romantic sides of life, that life itself is worthy of some sort of devotion, some sort of appreciation. Okay, so I'm not going to talk too much more about that. Like I said, I want to try and not make my reports like a million years long, but let's see. That's just where I'm at anyway. Okay, so then the moon then will square with Saturn, and then makes that opposition to Uranus, basically back to back. So I'm going to try and talk about them kind of simultaneously. The moon is setting up for this intense it's translating now the conversation between Saturn and Uranus. Moon is translating light in general. And also, I thought I wanted to mention too, somebody asked, I said to somebody recently, it's like, what am I doing in this channel? It's like, the reason why I'm doing this so slowly and one at a time with everything is because I think it's important to watch the moon. And for me, these forecasts are about seeing where the moon's at and what the moon's doing. Of course, there's all the other big transits and stuff, but by following the moon, we get the nuances, we get something more personal, because the moon represents us on some level, it represents the common people, it represents the fluctuations and flows of the everyday, our emotional states and things like that. And so by following the moon, you can really get a sense of what things are being picked up on, what things are not, what things are getting close to us intimately, and what things, how things are just happening, because the moon's also about it's joys in the third house, that hustle and bustle of the everyday. So there's something very mundane about that. Anyway, so that's the reason why my forecasts go so slowly, because I try to watch the moon. Anyway, the moon is in the sensitive place still in Scorpio. There's maybe some sense of dread on some level, some darkness, weakness, vulnerability that we're having. I thought this would be, something that kind of interesting that happened to me this morning too, is that some friends really reached out and connected. Maybe it was all through text or whatever, but it's still really cool. And I think people were more open to being vulnerable at this time, because there is this feeling of insecurity and not really having our routines down, maybe being off the game with Saturn being retrograde, and just like things being in an uncomfortable position, things that we want normally stable or unstable with Uranus in Taurus. So this could be a good time to be vulnerable with others, to open up to others on some level. It's a good time when vulnerability is in some level the ticket to pushing the story forward. I think that, this fear of having some weakness, this isn't, like I was saying before, this is increasing our need to have some sort of power and strength again. And I think Scorpio is the sign where we see our weak points, where we see vulnerabilities. And it's also, that's why it's associated with like covert attacks and military strategy in some level, because you see where the point to strike, you see the Achilles heel, but it also represents the Achilles heel itself. So on some level, we may be just feeling more vulnerable and insecure and not really our best selves. And so that's a good chance to connect with others, to try and to see that like we're not in this alone on some level. So there's these overarching challenges of the year, and they may pose greater threats than we thought we anticipated. Maybe, you know, something we knew what was going on, but we didn't expect it to become so severe. Maybe it was like something out of left field that just took place. And, you know, it's leaving us feeling a bit unprotected and vulnerable. We don't really know exactly what the right next thing to do is. Or maybe we do, but we think that it has to, you know, it all has to account up to something. It all has to make some big difference. So if we've been feeling like, you know, we got hit with something that transpired last week more deeply that hurts, it may feel like, you know, we don't really have any choice in the matter right now. We just have to go with it. It's uncomfortable. There's lots of delays. Things are not going according to plan as usual. But on some level, we can just like, you know, try to work with that uncomfortability. Know that there are hard decisions to be made. It may be that we can't be in the place that we need to be right now, or that you know, things are just uncertain. So, you know, do we keep that to ourselves, waiting for the best opportunities to do something about it, or do we risk losing our serenity? You know, take a risk losing what we desire to be stable and steady. So I feel like this seems like it's a kind of like damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of decision-making situation. Like there's not enough time to go through a safe decision-making process right now, or that maybe the decision's not up to you entirely and you just have to wait and see what happens. And even if something dramatic does happen where it's like, okay, now I have to make a decision about something, it's like, there's something holding you back from being able to be as present as you want to be, or to be, you know, be as part of the solution as you want to be. So, you know, instinctually, there's this feeling of fear and wanting to run away, but intuitively, there's this need to do something that matters intimately on some level. Anyway. So it's kind of an interesting Monday, because I think the last 2 Mondays, it's been all about the moon being through fixed signs, activating this Saturn-Uranus dynamic. And I thought that was interesting how that just keeps continuing through the weeks ahead. Anyway, the moon just keeps going through the day. Hold on. We're still on Monday here. Right. And then we got that Venus-Neptune trine that goes exact in the afternoon. This is kind of interesting. Could be fun, could be tranquil, could be, you know, it could be like over the weekend, some of us, as that was building up, because, you know, it was building up over the last day or two. It could be that we spent some time with friends doing something by the water, doing something water-based. This could also be when we did something at home, some sort of home spa, or maybe we're just sweating it out at home on some level. But yeah, the last time we had a nice Venus-Neptune transit was in early May. I thought I would put, you know, that was when Venus was in Taurus and we got that sextile. It was a sextile then. And this could be similar on some level, but maybe from a different connection. Back then, I think that things were a bit lost in the clouds, maybe a little bit too much pleasure going on with Venus in Taurus. Now Venus is in Cancer. So there's something about wanting to be more intimate, maybe more gentle than something more like pleasure seeking. Some, you know, like platonic relationships versus sexual relationships, things like that. Now things are maybe somewhat more romantic. Maybe there's big feelings. There's this indulging in daydreams. Not really sure what else to say about this. It could be a really great night on general, or over the weekend, maybe you had a really great date that happened, or Monday night might just be a good time to do a date. I mean, basically Venus is going to be, you know, in that engagement at least for another day or two. So, you know, if you do go on a date in the next 48 hours, it could be a really good chance to connect with somebody on this interesting, more spiritual level, maybe more intoxicating level. There could be chances for escapism. So just be aware that if some people who are doing a lot of drugs over the weekend and things like that, you may be getting involved in something that could hit you later in the week, because Venus is going to make that opposition to Pluto before the week ends. So that's something to be aware of, that maybe like you get a reality check later in the week, or the fear hits you. I remember when I used to have really bad hangovers, and then this fear hits you. It's like you had all that fun for all that time, and everything feels so far away and washed out and dissolved, but then reality comes back in and the fear hits you, and it's like you're gonna die. So that's I don't want to scare anybody with that, but I feel like that's the vibe a little bit. Like right now there's this like getting a lot of pleasure out of like letting problems drift away to the periphery and just like being one with the universe kind of thing. And then it kind of like sinks back in on some level. So, anyway, if you can enjoy the evening with those you connect with spiritually or intimately, maybe you can get some pleasure bonds out of that. It doesn't have to be this toxic thing, right? It can also just be something about it can be something about spiritual connection, fantasy connection, indulging in playing with fantasy on some level. It can also be about enjoying some sort of very fantasy-based sexual relationship, indulging in that, indulging in a pleasure that fulfills some sort of fantasy on some level. But yeah, I think it's important to be aware that, there's something very romantic, rose-colored glasses going on, oceanic, dissolving into pleasure, and it's not going to last. It's not going to last forever. So if you are indulging on some level with things, just be aware that, you may get a bit of a shock later in the week. Anyway. So that's kind of Monday. So let's go on into Tuesday. Tuesday, June 22nd, blah, blah, blah. So Mundane connects with Venus and Neptune. I think this is like here in Germany, it's the middle of the night, but wherever you are, whatever that connection with Venus and Neptune, now it's going to be like really deeply integrated, maybe somehow deeply understood, really felt. And it could, if you are doing something that's really about indulging in these pleasures and this fantasy or something, I think with the moon being in Scorpio, where it's a bit more vulnerable, it's a bit more open, and a bit more defensive on some level. But in this case, it's like maybe the defenses are taken down, and it's just like letting it all in and feeling things really, really deeply, not really letting our guard down on some level, and letting ourselves like play with that. I think with Mars also being in Leo still. So there's something about like wanting to let that big feelings, that big pleasure sink down deep into us on some level, like really getting hit, like getting that big wave of pleasure that comes from that. And that comes for something that's like so cathartic and deep that we like that we just want it to, it feels like it'll go forever, because it's also in this fixed sign, and it's like a feeling of something forever on some level. Anyway, so let's move forward with that. I'm going to try and do this quicker. And then the moon makes that sextile to Pluto. So I feel like this is the beginning of that Venus-Pluto opposition on some level. It's like now maybe we're feeling like, it's for here in Germany, but it can be wherever you are, but it's that feeling of like the morning after on some level. Maybe it's like you're still kind of indulged, you're still like hazy, you're still not really sure what just happened in general. But then with that sextile to Pluto, it's like maybe that first ray of sun comes in and wakes you up, and you're like, oh shit, like where the hell am I? Or also like you remember that, okay, that night happened or something like that. And so you get that first kind of dose of like what just happened, something really something really released there. There was something transformative, maybe forceful, a bit dark on some level, but with it being with the sextile, it's like, it's a bit soft. And that's what I mean. It's like, maybe you wake up and the sun gets you in the eyes and it's like, ah, God. But then at the same time, you're like, you remember on some level what transpired, but then you just go back to bed or something like that. Or it doesn't have to be that like scenario. It could be if you're in the daytime, just whatever was going on through the day, maybe you realize that that there's some deadline due, or there's something that you had to do that doesn't really go along with the story of being really indulging and pleasurable at this time. And it's like, oh, I still have to do something that I really don't really know if I have the energy to do right now. Anyway, yeah, that goes down. So there's that kind of like dose that I feel like that leads up to that Venus opposition later in the week. Anyway, so then the moon basically makes no other aspects until it gets into Sagittarius. Then it's connecting with the south node. So this is where I think there's really this like kind of lull, this decrease on some level. Tuesday could be a day when we're just like very low in energy in general. Yeah, and then it makes that square to Jupiter. So, maybe what we were hoping for, some of the optimism we were feeling now that Jupiter's retrograde, with that first square that the moon makes to it since Jupiter went retrograde. Now we're kind of maybe seeing what that means on some level, or feeling what that means. We're like, okay, now things are really, with the moon connecting to the south node as well, it's like, okay, there's like this decrease happening. Things are not building up the same way. Things are going back down. Maybe there could be this uncertainty and fear a little bit with the north-south node. And with Jupiter now going backwards, it's like, oh no, maybe, it's like you expected, especially if some of us expected those things to continue growing, but now they're like not. It's like things kind of slowed down. We're not getting the messages we thought we were going to get all the time. If we had thought we connected on some level with a business partner or something, maybe now they're not calling us or messaging us the same way as before. And we just like kind of lost touch with that or something. And now we're kind of like feeling that that's not happening. There's this kind of crisis in terms of, if we think about the where the moon is in that, and it's in the overcoming square. So there's that, the feelings are overcoming the optimism. And so that feeling of like, oh God, like, things are not going according to plan anymore. And maybe I didn't prepare for it, but I think basically all last week too is about reminding us that the last 2 weeks even have been reminding us that, this plans that we have, or that the story we've been telling ourselves, the hope we've been having. Yes, we need that hope. It's going to keep us going. It's going to keep us having faith that tomorrow is still going to be another day. But I think with this square to Jupiter, it's like, now that Jupiter's retrograde, it's like, okay, I don't know where that's going now. And is it going to come back? There's a feeling of like, I don't know if it's going to come back or not. Anyway. So that's kind of the last thing that goes on Tuesday. So let's go into Wednesday. All right, so first thing Wednesday is that we get that, yeah, cool. So Mercury stations direct. So that's good. This Mercury retrograde feels like the longest one it definitely feels longer than the one that was in Aquarius a few months ago, earlier in the year. I don't know what you guys, but this Mercury retrograde just feels really long. It's like so much is happening. I think just because of that North Node relationship, and you see Mercury is stuck here at 16 degrees. I mean, it's 7 degrees away from the North Node, but it's alone there now in Gemini. So all these like Mercurial Gemini things, wherever you have Gemini in your chart, these things have just been increasing and more and more and more. And like, you didn't expect this to happen. You didn't expect that to happen. I don't know. There's like, you're just trying to get more of it, but then at the same time, things that you don't want are coming in too. And, now that Mercury is just like stuck there, stationing direct, it's like, I think wherever you have 16 degrees in the immutable signs too, if you have any placements around 16 degrees, you know, these things are just like a bit in overdrive right now. They're a bit over the top. Maybe we're just thinking about those specific topics way too much, and there's not really much action taking place in that situation. So this is like thinking we're out of the fire, but really, you know, we're still in the pan too. I think Mercury's then going to have to make that square to Neptune again later on, and so there's this kind of like feeling like, you know, maybe our minds are playing tricks on us. It's like, okay, things are starting to go forward again, but you know, it may be that we're not really seeing things so clearly. It's like, you know, we're so thirsty now. We're so thirsty after being dried out and being kind of being limited on what we're able to get done at this time. You know, it's just like there's never been enough energy or time to get everything done that we need to get done. It's like one thing after another, and then now we're kind of seeing that's like, oh, there's the possibility on the horizon, like there's the mirage, there's the oasis on the horizon, but it's just like a trick of the eye. There's probably not water there, but we're just so thirsty we're willing to believe it. You know, Mercury's on pause. Nothing much mercurial is really moving forward in general. So, you know, with Mercury also being the north node, it's like our minds are in overdrive. We're thinking about everything. We have all the, you know, everything's being figured out in our heads, but then there's no results. It's like thinking like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed with things. But then when you actually put it in front of you, it's like, what's actually going on? It's like maybe two things, but maybe that's the truth of it. It's like maybe two things is a lot of things. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's just something to keep in mind with that Mercury station direct. And it's not until Mercury gets, I think, till 24th degree of Gemini that it leaves that shadow period. So we're still in it, you know, we're still having to deal with whatever mercurial things we've had to go back over, we've had to revise, we've had to rethink and recalculate, re-examine until that time. And it may be that just now we're like really being like, okay, I know now what's going on. I know what happened. And, you know, I just have to start taking action and do things one thing at a time moving forward. Anyway. So then Moon makes that trine to Mars. You know, it's getting ready to the south node there. I think that in some level is like, maybe we can, you know, put on a show, take center stage, take action towards what we want, towards where we're feeling authentic and wanting to shine forward and be direct in things. And we can do that in a way that's like maybe a bit more low key, doesn't have to be, you know, so super boastful around everything. I think with Sun being in Cancer, it's a bit more intimate, it's a bit more close. And with Jupiter being retrograde, it's like, yeah, somehow I feel like that's like some way of us doing something that's about working towards efforts that we want to be seen and be part of the show, part of the limelight in whatever part of our life is more intimate and a bit more low key. Okay, and then, yeah, Moon makes that exact conjunction to the south node. Like I was saying before, I think that's just about everything really slowing down, or at least decreasing, and like our emotional and our energy levels are kind of decreased right now. I think with the sun, you know, it's just bringing up that sun moon connection again too. So the sun just entered Moon sign, and what's the moon doing? It's crossing the south node. So it's just like lowness, low, downers. So just be aware of that. I think also with the south node, it's got that Neptunian kind of thing about drugs and stuff. So if we feel like, you know, we need to down ourselves and like not feel anything and disconnect and dissolve and run away, just be aware of that on Wednesday, there is that vibe, especially Wednesday morning, Tuesday into Wednesday, in general, wherever you are in the world, there is that kind of like maybe desire to take a few oxys and just check out that night. But actually it's probably not such a good thing because it won't help us in the long run, especially if the moon gets ready to go into Capricorn, where we gotta fucking be real, because there's gonna be that Capricorn full moon, and it's like, okay, where are the things that need to be working, because they got to be working, otherwise, the boat's not rolling. And I think if we are disconnecting at this time, we're not really getting that full effect of what's going to happen later in the day with that Sun Jupiter trine. So, this is a test of faith right now. This is a test of, can we keep it going? And I think with the moon making that sextile there to Saturn too, just after that, around midday here, but wherever you are, I mean, I'm going to even stop saying these times, because it really doesn't matter. It's like wherever you are, with the moon making that sextile to Saturn, it's like, I feel like that's similar to what the sextile to Pluto is like. It's like, okay, there's some sort of resistance towards wanting to disconnect. And that resistance may be our conscience. That resistance may be the outside world. I mean, with Saturn being in Aquarius, I think that it is more about the outside world. Maybe it is more just about the things around us in general, or the world outside of our little bubble is something's not going straight forward right now. And it's like we can kind of sense that the engine is starting to run out of gas on some level. And with that sextile, it's like maybe there's some modifications we can make in our personal lives that we can help to make sure that we can keep our discipline in order, our routines keeping going, just to try and just modify things a little bit in order to work towards those bigger goals, those long-term goals, those long-term structures and plans, just try to make that minor modification, whatever that needs to be, so that we can kind of keep knowing that, even though Jupiter is retrograde and, moon's in Jupiter's sign, we can have that hope, that in the long term, Jupiter is going to go back into Pisces, and Saturn's just not Saturn still needs that support. So moon, maybe with that sextile there, it kind of sees that, we're not out of it yet. We still have some work to be done before any of that kind of those big increases or big expansions in our lives can see some new fruition in the future. But right now it's like, okay, what do I need to do in order to get from here to there? And I think with that sextile, we're kind of maybe seeing we're feeling some of that, or at least we're starting to understand that more deeply. Yeah. And then, the sun makes that exact trine to Jupiter. And I think this is really great. I mean, Jupiter is, trines are of the essence of Jupiter. So Jupiter is in its domicile. Yes, sure, it's retrograde, but it's still in its domicile. And with the sun being in Cancer, this Jupiter's exaltation, I think this is really quite optimistic. It helps us to see that there is a future to things. It's not the end yet, but there is things that will come back around, that will help us to get our circumstances where they are, where they're more intimate, where we need that more security, that they will come back. We'll get that support. And I think it is an emotional time, and in general, any support we can get is good support. So just try to be open to that. I think this is about knowing also where you stand now for yourself, and also where others stand in terms of with you in your plans and in your support groups in general. Where do you have Pisces? Where do you have Cancer? These are the two things in your life that will have more support in general for each other for the next little bit. And as I think maybe even feeling that building up through Tuesday into Wednesday. So, who do you keep in your circle now that you're going to need in order to keep going forward? And then who do you need to let go of? If there's been any new people in your life in the last, this year in general, and that have really not turned out to be of any substance whatsoever, it's also okay to just let those people go. And maybe even people from the past too, with sun being in Cancer, you know, maybe people that you've just been kind of holding on to and you don't really know why, you know, it's okay to let them go. So yeah, and I think with Mars coming up to that opposition to Saturn and Uranus, I think it's important to kind of get to a place where we, you know, where is the trust? Where's the faith? Where's the clarity, truth, authenticity? And where is that all going at this time? And just like take a moment, you know, this evening, you know, through the rest of Wednesday, because basically the only other thing that happens is that opposition to the moon's making that opposition to Mercury, where it's like, okay, where is the big vision right now? And the big vision, you know, it's not expanding anymore. So when can we know it's going to go again? And what can we do now to prepare ourselves for that and to keep things going until that time when there's just an abundance of resources to be used and things are really expanding even without us even trying. So I think that, you know, it's a good time to figure that out for ourselves. Like, what do we need in order to continue going forward, to continue to continue until like things are going according to plan again. Anyway, yeah, Moon makes that opposition to Mercury. Mercury doesn't want to just work on hope now. Mercury's going forward. So it's like, okay, what calculations need to be done now to keep them going forward? Maybe the moon wants to just like kind of let go of things and also keep that hope in mind. But with that opposition, it's like, okay, well, hope is not going to, you know, bring peace to the world. We have to do things as well, right? So Mercury's like, okay, what is it that needs to be done? If you want this plan to work, what is it that needs to be done in order to do that? So, you know, Wednesday evening could be a good time to figure that out and connect with that. All right, so let's just move on to Thursday. Yeah, now we're getting that. It's kind of like super middle of the night. And I think kind of what Wednesday was building up to in general was that opposition of Venus to Pluto. So Thursday morning here, wherever you are, doesn't matter. Yeah, and I think this is kind of a time where it's like we can ask ourselves, are you in a place or situation that you should be right now? Do you even know where you are? Is there something uncomfortable, something maybe sexual, even something that you've been taking pleasure in that's happening that all of a sudden, you know, that you realize that actually really uncomfortable with it and you don't want that thing. You don't want what you have right now. That thing that maybe you were getting a lot of pleasure out of, you were getting a lot of security out of, you were getting a lot of comfort out of in general. And now you're like, oh, actually, I don't really feel so good about this. And you're waking up to that, and it's like something that's pent up in relationships, something that needed to be released. You know, this could also be a very sexual time for some people. You know, Pluto is all about power and deep, intense, transformative feelings and regenerative, forceful, dark energies. It's like the underworld just like purging up. You know, what's the Pluto story? It's like kidnaps Persephone from Demeter. And then Demeter is like, okay, well, there's no more summer now. It's just everything's going to die. So, you know, there's like this feeling of like something is taken away. And so now there's going to be consequences. But then there has to be an agreement made. I mean, with the opposition, it's like, okay, there has to be some sort of agreement made between opposites in order for us to get back to things working normally. And in a relationship on some level, with Venus being involved, it's like, where in our relationships are things not really where we want them? And what kind of consequences are there to some of the things we've taken from relationships or taken from partners or taken away from other relationships or other people that on some level we have to renegotiate. We have to renegotiate something in order to let go, to be in the relationship or not be in the relationships for them to be healthier in general. Like, where's the reality of the relationship? And I think like Moon's also really not going to be comfortable once it, I think that's like, again, this mirage that I was talking about between Venus and Neptune, the Venus-Neptune trine that was only a couple of days ago, now it's been lifted. Now the trip, it's like the trip is going on too long. It's like, I don't know, for any of you that have done lots of psychedelics or anything, I've always had bad psychedelic trips. And the worst of it is like, you do these drugs or something, whatever, and you get to this point where you're like, okay, I don't want this to keep going, but they just keep going. They just keep going. And this is like that point where you're like, okay, it's just going to keep going. It's just going to keep going. I just have to go through this. And I think there's like a strange and potentially dangerous revealing of some sort of like trust being broken in that. It's like, just like with the drugs, it's like, you trusted that you were going to have a good time and everything's set up. You're all in the right place and everything. But like, then it's not. And you're just like, and you realize like the people around you are not who you thought they were. Could be cathartic, but maybe it's not necessarily cathartic for you either. Maybe some people are like having the best time ever, but then for you, you're like, oh, I'm not really having a great time here. So, are you in healthy relationships right now? Or are the issues beginning to reveal themselves? I think the rose-colored glasses are being taken off. Some level, the monster's coming out of the closet, right? So good times. Moon then makes that square to Neptune. I think that just emphasizes it more. Rose-colored glasses are coming off. And then Moon moves into Capricorn. So we're getting ready to, the full moon vibes are in effect. The full moon is going to happen that night too. So as soon as the moon entered Capricorn too, it makes that sextile to Jupiter. And this is where I think, again, it's like, we're realizing that just going on faith and optimism is not enough. Of course, getting anything faith and optimistic right now is going to help us continue. It's going to help us feel like, okay, what I'm doing now really matters and it's going somewhere. It's not just for nothing. And I think that sextile is going to help us see that. And also with the moon being in Capricorn, it's like, okay, well, what do I need to do in terms of that feeling of faith and optimism? It's like, okay, I can either just sit here and wait for tomorrow, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to work out, right? Sometimes inaction works, but when the moon's in Capricorn, it's like action works, right? So, what kind of things do I need to change or modify or update or reharmonize or connect with to my hopes and dreams that has to do with something I can do now, moving forward. Right. And then we get that Capricorn full moon that night. So like all full moons, this is a culmination, a peak in energy, especially since the first quarter moon, when moon was in Virgo. What was the crisis? What did we have to push through that now is becoming illuminated, is becoming clear, it's becoming seen? Where do you have Capricorn in your chart that you are now getting more clarity about, and where you need to get more real, right? Moon's not comfortable in Capricorn. So this is about facing some consequences on some level. I really like this saying. I think Eckhart Tolle says it, where he says that spirituality is about forming a healthier relationship with reality. And I think the moon going through Capricorn right now, just after making that sextile to Jupiter, and we got that Sun Jupiter trine, I think this is really about like forming a healthier relationship with the reality. Like, where are you right now? What are you doing right now? Owning up to things, taking the hit, knowing that like shit is just not fair. Who told you that the world is this fair and even and blessed, easygoing place? It's like life is hard. Life is hard, and we have to do things in order to live with that. To get more out, to be comfortable with that, we have to do the work, and we also have to do the basics. You know, are you getting enough rest? Are you showering? Are you shaving? Are you brushing your teeth? Are you eating food? You know, these are things that you need to keep going in order to keep living. And, you know, at the bare minimum, at least sleeping and eating, you know, making sure you get enough water. Speaking of water, I'm going to drink a little bit here. It's like, are you drinking enough water in the day? Because if you're not going to get very far, right? So be realistic. Be realistic with yourself. If you're doing too much right now, lower the bar. It's okay to lower the bar. Nobody's going to beat you up for only doing what you're able to do right now. And it's okay. You know, it's not a comfortable lunation, but this is not the time to necessarily be comfortable. This is the time to do something, to take action, to do work, to do the work. And make sure, you know, you have everything you need to keep in order to keep things going, to be more efficient. And I think this full moon lunation is like, okay, like I was saying before, it's like, what efficient things do I need still working in order to keep working towards my goals, keep working towards my dreams, keep working towards the future, and the hope that although things are not perfect now, they're never going to be perfect, but at least I can make progress. I think it's about progress, not perfection in this case. So, you know, what needs to be working in order to continue? You know, what gears need to be they need to be oiled, not just like the whole car or bike or whatever needs to be perfect and everything needs to be the best equipment and everything. It's like, okay, if the gears are not working, the machine's not going, right? So it's just about keeping the gears oiled. So go back to your plan. Look at your plan. What does your plan say? And I think, you know, just follow the plan. Follow the signs and you will be okay. All right. That's it for Thursday. So Friday, not much going on Friday. What do we get first? We got that trine of the moon to Uranus. Maybe something innovative we can do in our plan, something innovative we can do with the basics, with the things that we know are going to work no matter what. Maybe there's something unexpected that keeps that going, that helps us to do the things that we need to do in order to keep the ball moving and whatever. Something that's like unexpected but helpful with the trine. And from a place that is more grounded, maybe more stable, something that we always turn back to whenever things go darkest or things get most challenging or most uncertain and insecure. So yeah, that could be kind of nice. And then the other thing going on that day is that, Neptune stations retrograde. I honestly, I don't really know what this means, but I guess, like, you know, retrogrades, what are they? Going backwards. Things are not going according to their natural order, to their natural direction. And, you know, what's Neptune about? Illusions, fantasy, fogginess, rose-colored glasses, delusions, imagination, fantasy, you know, all that kind of like wishy-washy, dissolve into nothingness kind of stuff. And now that it's going backwards, it's like, you know, maybe all that stuff is kind of revealing its ungroundedness. It's like it's like realizing that the fog is just fog. It's not, there's no density to it. It may look dense, it may taste dense, it may have a sensation on us, but we can move through it, right? And I think it's like, what sort of Neptunian themes in our life? Where do we have Pisces in our chart that are now kind of being pulled back, where we're not like escaping out into the vastness of the cosmos and whatever. And that's like maybe being pulled back. Or on another level, it could also be that with it going retrograde, for some of us, it could be like now maybe those things are starting to become more difficult to see how they're affecting our lives and things like that. So if we have been escaping and dealing in drugs, or like just going out. And as soon, now that things are starting to calm down with the lockdowns and everything, now we're just like, go, go, go. I want to have fun. And like all that fun that I wasn't able to have, now I want to have it. And it's like, maybe that's starting to take its toll, and it's starting to show how it can really lead us down paths that where we don't know where we're going on some levels. So I think it's also good to consider the degree, this 23rd degree of the mutable signs. So Pisces, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, if you have any personal planets at 23 degrees, those are getting like kind of hit right now by this Neptunian force that's all of a sudden stuck there. It's frozen there, and it's starting to go backwards, and it's starting to kind of go really weird and kind of super bizarre, and kind of this uncompromising unity for everything. Everything has to be part of my party, and everything has to be part of feeling good and disconnecting and having a good time and losing myself and blah, blah, blah. And if you're not part of that, then you're just you're out of it. You're out of it. And I think like this could be hitting that. This could be hitting whatever part of our charts that are getting lost in that Neptunian force. So yeah, that's the Neptune retrograde. Anyway, so moving forward to Saturday, the moon makes that conjunction. So the moon first on Saturday sextiles to Neptune. I think that just reinforces what I was saying about the Neptune retrograde. Maybe now we're starting to feel that these things are happening in our lives, these kinds of disconnects and desire for seamless blending and mixing between everything, and like wishy-washiness and fogginess on some level. And we're starting to really feel that that's like maybe kind of weird and not really gonna be working in terms of our efficiency levels, right? So if we've been like trying to burn candles at both ends of the clock, we may start to be feeling like, oh, that's not enough. It's not enough if I want to like just be dissolved into nothingness all the time, right? So we may need to make some changes. We may need to alter the plan a little bit with the sextile, just make modifications, try to make things more balanced and even, so that we can still enjoy these dissolving spiritual, even floating off into nothingness feelings, because sometimes we just need that. Sometimes we just need to disconnect and be a part of, be a part of the non-duality, that the body and mind are one. Who is the one listening behind the mind? Is the mind different from the listener? What is Buddha nature? And I think like if we just live in that total disconnect, it's like, maybe for some people it works, but my experience is that you have to find balance, and that's maybe more of an enlightened place in the world where you can have more balance anyway. So like I said, I think that just reinforces that. Anyway, so the moon then makes that conjunction to Pluto. Could be a good time to, if you need help, to ask for help, receive help. If you're feeling really scared and lost or something, it's okay to reach out to somebody and just say, hey, I'm not feeling good. Can you help me right now? And I feel like that would be a good time to get that help and everything, right? Especially since that opposition to Venus, something really scary and the things that we're taking pleasure in occurred, and we need help. So just ask for it. Cool. And then, the moon also makes that opposition to Venus. So I think it's just translating that conversation that I've been talking about all week anyway, with that Pluto darkness, something kind of enigmatic has revealed, or something kind of has popped up that was secretive that we didn't know how to deal with. And we don't have to deal with it by ourselves. And so I think, yeah, that for me, that whole connection there, that translation is about feeling afraid and needing help, and then connecting to Venus, asking for help, getting help. Right. And then nothing really goes on except for until the moon moves into Aquarius. It's a bit weird. Moon approaches that opposition to Mars into Sunday, right? And I think as soon as the moon enters into Aquarius, we're starting to really feel that tension between the fixed signs, really. You know, maybe even more than when it was in Scorpio, when we're just feeling vulnerable and we're wanting to, because there was the trines going on between all the water energy. So at least there was some emotional support. But now that the moon's in Aquarius, I think like this is kind of troubling. There's something distressing going on. You know, with Mars in Leo, there's this drive to be prideful, to make a show, to be center stage, you know, all that Leo, I'm seen kind of stuff. But the moon doesn't feel really secure. The moon is maybe being held back now. Something. Maybe we're holding ourselves back, partners holding us back, family holding us back, careers holding us back, something's holding us back. And, you know, it can also feel like we're just not up to challenges right now. There's big challenges being faced, things that, you know, for instance, I'm doing this exhibition coming up and I'm not sure if I'm able to do it because of things happening back in Canada and also because of Corona and things like that. And I'm just like worried that if I keep going with it, something bad's going to happen. But on some level, I'm also feeling like I'm not enough or something. And there's this big imposter syndrome vibes, I think, once the moon goes into Aquarius, this imposter syndrome feelings, or things are just not enough. But I think the key here is to be seen, especially if you don't want to be seen. You know, just put yourself out there. It's not time to be perfect. You're never going to be perfect. So just do the show, be the show. Wherever you have Leo in your life, that's where the show is happening. And so the show must go on. I remember when I used to play music and stuff like that, you know, things were always going wrong. There's always mistakes. Somebody messed up, something fell over, blah, 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 but the show must go on. So just keep going. It's impossible to please everyone. Somebody out there is going to look at what you're doing and see all the faults and the problems and think that they can do it better. This is just like everything, even in art, across all, whatever job you do, somebody's always going to think they're going to be able to do it better, but they're not doing it. You're doing it, right? So just let that go. Let that go. Okay, so let's go on into Sunday. And then first thing first on Sunday is, let's see, yeah, basically right as, I mean, look, like Venus just went into Leo, but then like what, an hour later, we get that opposition from Moon to Mars. So I think with Venus joining Mars, that's a good thing. In general, I think that Venus is going to be there to help things, to mend things, to renegotiate things, to bring some compromise, bring some balance, you know, bring some support if we've been not really feeling our best, or we're not really thinking that we're the best at the show that we're putting on. There's going to be some sort of like emotional support, or at least seeing like, with the opposition to Mars, it's like, at least like now we're understanding what it is that we're doing that maybe is wrong. Maybe there is somebody being critical on us and they let us know on some level, but that's okay. I think that's okay. And I think with Venus being there, it's like, it's just reassuring us that maybe what we're doing can be changed on some level to make it better or whatever, but it doesn't mean that we're doing something wrong, right? And I would not be surprised if we also start to see some of the temperatures starting to decrease a bit around the world on some level, at least probably in Europe. I mean, I was already looking at the the weather today, and it looks like the weather starts to kind of like become more moderate later in the week anyway. So this could be part of that. I think also with Jupiter just going retrograde in general, it's like things that are just like big are now going down anyway. And I think with Venus entering into Leo, it's like maybe our relationships can be something we're more proud of. We can have more authenticity in relationships. We can get support for some of our efforts that we're not feeling totally authentic in. And there can be more loyalty and trust between relationships and our efforts in general. And maybe we're not feeling the most secure place with the moon in Aquarius. And there are some like delays in where we want to be and where we want for the plan, for like the hustle and bustle to go forward and whatever. But that's okay. And I think like with Venus being there, because Mars is going to be going through some really hard stuff next week. And I think with Venus being right behind there, it's like, okay, hard stuff will happen. It's going to be not easy to deal with, but there's going to be something coming up right behind that's going to give us that mending, that healing, that bonding, that love that maybe we need in order to survive whatever hardships we go through. So I think in general, it's just going to calm down some of the extremes, or like extremes may still like hit, but then they'll calm down shortly after, I think, with Venus being there. Next week also, I mean, I'll talk a little bit about that later, but there's something that I thought was interesting, because the moon's going to be in Aries right when Mars makes the opposition, and then it goes into Taurus when it makes the square to Uranus. So there's something like about emotional support to both those things that keeps things from being like the worst possible case scenario. So I think that's good. Okay. Right. So moon then makes that conjunction to Saturn. I think this is just like where maybe we hit a wall on some level. We've been feeling it already, I think, since moon entered into Aquarius. So don't be surprised if things just get delayed and set back. Remember 3 weeks ago, that Monday when moon was in Saturn, and it's just like maybe there's roadblocks on the way. And, you know, all we can do is wait for those to end, or we figure out a new route, because basically as soon as the moon moves past it an hour later or two, then it makes that square to Uranus. And then it's like, maybe we found a way through it, but then it leads us down like a back roads that we have no idea where it goes, and a lot of unexpected twists and turns, so to speak. So just try to take it as it comes, adjust. You know, it's a square, so there's something like forceful about it. There's something conflicting, maybe tense, dynamic to it. So if we have to make quick and dirty turns, then we just have to. It's like we have to just play it by ear, play it as they go. It's not really like a Sunday of total rest, or like we feel like we have to do something, but there's no like big solution to it until we get through that. Right. And then the last thing that happens on Sunday, moon makes that trine to Mercury, which is now finally out of the 16th degree of Gemini. So Mercury, you know, our minds are moving forward, or we're starting to apply skills in ways that things are starting to go forward again. And with the moon being in Aquarius, it's like maybe we're seeing where the progress and the potentiality is possible. Sure, there's been setbacks. Sure, there's been unexpected delays and dilemmas and all that stuff. Things are not, you know, adding up according to calculations and whatnot. Or now we're starting to see where the calculations were missing matching, and we can start to kind of put those back in order to make it more according to where we see the future for ourselves, where we see where we've been feeling alienated on some level, where we wanted to reconnect and be social with others, where, you know, we're trying to like let go of certain resentments and certain things that we've been holding on for too long. And it's like time to break the rules on some level, and to break the rules so that, you know, we can think our way through these things and start to take action on that. With the moon making that trine, I think it's like a support between where we are in the world and where our place is in the world in general, and where we are thinking, where we can think our way through that, or where we can start to communicate where it is we're placed in this world, and some level get support between the place we are in our lives right here and now, and what we're communicating and trying to make an exchange with others about that. All right, so that's it. That's it for this week. So I'm going to stop the share. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Always next week, like I said, with the Mars opposition to Saturn, then the square to Uranus. This is like probably the most contentious thing that's happening this summer. It's going to be dramatic. Something like this hasn't really happened since the 60s. So just be conscious of that at that time, what was going on, there was a lot of civil unrest. There was a lot of military uncertainty. But unlike back then, the Mars, Saturn and Uranus were in opposition. They weren't in square. So there was this kind of push and pull between things, like two big forces, what was going on in the 60s, the Cold War. So two big forces were at a head with one another, but now they're in a square. So there's something about pushing things forward and disrupting the status quo in order for things to go forward, like order versus chaos kind of stuff. And I think with Mars, where Mars is right now in Leo, it's like there's something about pride, not like pride's being wounded. And that's why I'm really glad that Venus is there, because Venus is going to be able to, mend where prides are wounded before really bad things happen. Anyway, I wouldn't be surprised if next week some sort of like military thing goes on. So just be conscious of that if you start to see some of that stuff in the news. All right, that's it for this week. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I really appreciate all your support and wicked words. Please leave a comment below how your week is going, how this astrology has been adding up for you. Please hit the like button, subscribe, comment, share this video with someone you think that might help them through their week. And if you want to book a consultation with me, contact information's down below. Also, go down below and subscribe to Perry's newsletter, because that's where my monthly astrologies come out. I do horoscopes for each of the 12 signs, and also like an overview forecast. That it's all written, so maybe I'll be more clear there than I am in speaking, but who knows? All right. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Keep coming back. Wishing you all the best. Have a good week. Bye.